The stage is set. The city of Valoria shone like a jewel in the night. Its tall crystal towers reached into the sky, glowing with colors that shifted like living light. Roads of silver stretched between the buildings, and flying crafts glided silently above them. On this night, the city was alive with more than its usual beauty. Crowds filled the plazas, and banners of the Empire fluttered in the breeze. It was a night of celebration. Inside the grand hall, the most powerful beings of the galaxy had gathered. Leaders, nobles, and warriors from 100 alien worlds stood side by side. The grand hall itself was vast, built from black stone and lit by floating lanterns that burned with blue fire. The air hummed with whispers, laughter, and the sound of instruments tuning for the great show. At the center of it all sat Governor Seraphine, the ruler of Valoria. She was tall, elegant, and feared across the stars. Her silver skin reflected the hall's light, and her sharp eyes missed nothing. She was known as strong, ruthless, and always in control. No one had ever seen her break. No one had ever seen her cry. Beside her sat her daughter Ilara. Unlike her mother, Ilara was quiet and fragile. Her small body was weak, her legs unable to carry her far. While other children ran, climbed, and played, Ilara stayed seated, always watching from the side. The nobles often whispered about her, though never too loudly. "The governor's daughter is broken," they would say. "She cannot even walk properly." The governor never answered these whispers. But in her heart she carried a pain that never left her. She loved her daughter, yet she feared the galaxy would never see Ilara as anything more than a shadow. The celebration was meant to show the strength and unity of the Empire. There would be music, performances, and dances from many worlds. Each one would display the pride of its people. To be chosen to perform here was the highest honor. The audience expected greatness, nothing less. The first acts went as planned. A group of warriors from the desert planet of Rune performed a blade dance, their swords moving so fast they seemed like streams of fire. The crowd cheered. Then came the singers of Silora, their voices weaving together like rivers of sound. The hall filled with their haunting melody. Again the audience clapped and nodded in approval. Then came the humans. Humans were new to the galactic stage. Only a few years ago they had been discovered living on a small blue planet called Earth. Compared to the great alien civilizations, humans were weak, fragile, and untested. Many nobles laughed at the idea of humans joining such an event. "They are not ready," some said. "They are nothing but children among giants." Yet tonight one human stood alone on the stage. He was tall but plain compared to the glittering aliens. His clothes were simple, dark fabric with no jewels or shining metal. The hall grew quieter, curious but doubtful. What could this human possibly show that would matter to them? Governor Seraphine's eyes narrowed. She had not wanted humans in this performance, but the council had insisted. They said it would show the Empire's tolerance, its openness to new worlds. She agreed, but in truth she expected little. The human bowed deeply, showing respect. His voice, calm and clear, echoed through the hall. "Honored guests, great governor, I ask something unusual tonight. I do not wish to perform alone. I ask that the governor's daughter join me on this stage." The hall fell silent. Gasps rose from the audience. Some nobles laughed out loud. Others shook their heads in disbelief. "Impossible," one hissed. "How can the child dance? She cannot even walk." Seraphine's heart froze. Her hand tightened on the armrest of her throne. For a moment she thought she had misheard. But no, the human stood firm, waiting for her answer. Her daughter's eyes widened. Ilara looked at her mother, then at the human. She had never been asked to join, never been invited into the light. Always she was hidden, protected, kept away from the eyes of the galaxy. The hall's whispers grew louder. Some mocked. Others waited eagerly to see the governor's reaction. For the first time in many years, Seraphine felt unsure. To refuse might make her look cruel, fearful. To agree might end in disaster. Her daughter humiliated before all. Her voice came low, almost trembling. "Do not embarrass us." The human bowed again, as if that was all the permission he needed. His calm eyes met the governor's sharp gaze. He did not flinch. Then he turned to Ilara, offering his hand. The girl's small fingers hesitated, then slowly touched his. The crowd leaned forward. The air in the grand hall felt heavy, waiting, and so the human and the governor's fragile daughter stepped into the light of the stage. The celebration had changed. Something was about to happen that no one in that hall, not the nobles, not the soldiers, not even Governor Seraphine herself, would ever forget. The human's bold request, the hall had never been so quiet. Thousands of eyes fixed on the stage where the human stood, holding out his hand to the governor's fragile daughter. For a moment, time seemed frozen. The music had stopped. Even the floating lanterns above flickered as if waiting. No one understood what was happening. This was supposed to be a performance, a display of power and beauty. But this was madness. From the seats above, alien nobles whispered to each other in sharp, cruel tones, "This is a trick. He only wants to embarrass the governor." What can a broken child do on stage? Some laughed openly, their voices echoing through the chamber. Others smirked, eager to see failure. In their eyes, the human was already a fool. Governor Seraphine sat motionless on her high throne. Her hands gripped the carved arm so tightly that cracks appeared in the stone. Rage burned inside her, but behind it something else stirred, fear. This was not part of the plan. She had agreed to let the humans perform, but only as a show of the Empire's tolerance. They were meant to sing or dance politely, then step aside while the true civilizations displayed their greatness. Instead, this human was demanding the impossible. To bring her daughter Alara onto the stage before all the Empire's leaders was to expose her weakness. If Alara failed, if she stumbled, it would not just shame the girl. It would shame the governor herself. Seraphine wanted to shout to end this at once. Yet when she looked at the human, she found her voice caught in her throat. His eyes were steady, not mocking, not cruel. There was no arrogance in his face. He stood calm, waiting with patience as if he knew something none of them did. Alara's small hand trembled in his. She looked up at her mother, then back at the human. For the first time, her eyes shone with something different. Not fear, not sadness, but hope. And Seraphine, against all reason, against all caution, whispered the words that would change everything. "Do not embarrass us." The human bowed his head in respect. "I will not." He led Alara gently toward the center of the stage. The vast hall seemed even larger now, the two of them tiny figures before the crowd of thousands. The music master hesitated, unsure what to do. The human nodded and a soft rhythm began, slow and low. Not the usual grand alien anthem, but something simple. The human knelt beside Alara. He moved slowly, lifting his arm, guiding hers to follow. She hesitated, awkward, her movements stiff. The crowd chuckled cruelly. "See? She cannot do it. This is pointless." Seraphine felt her stomach twist. She wanted to stop it, to pull her daughter back into safety, away from the judgmental eyes. But then the human spoke softly, his voice carrying through the silence. "Do not look at them. Look only at me." Alara's wide eyes locked onto his. He moved again, gently swaying his hand. She mirrored him, unsteady at first, then smoother. The human's other hand rose, and soon she copied that too. Her face, once filled with worry, began to change. A faint smile touched her lips. The audience grew quieter. The human took a single step back and bowed, inviting her to follow. Alara tried. Her foot slid uncertainly and she nearly fell. But he was there, steadying her without letting her drop. She laughed. A small sound, but it echoed across the vast hall like music. That laugh silenced even the cruelest nobles. Step by step, the human guided her. The dance was not fast, not flawless, but it was alive. Each movement was filled with courage, not perfection. Each step told a story, not of power, but of heart. The governor felt her chest tighten. She had seen her daughter struggle every day of her life, seen her fall and fail, but she had never seen her like this. Daring, smiling, shining in front of all. Whispers in the audience changed. Where there had been mockery, there was now awe. Where there had been laughter, there was silence. The human raised his hand high, and Alara, trembling but determined, lifted hers to match. The hall's blue flames reflected off her face, making her look radiant. She turned once, slowly, carefully, and the nobles gasped. It was no longer a broken child before them. It was a girl who danced. The human stepped aside, letting her stand alone for a moment. All eyes were on her. No one mocked now. No one dared. Governor Seraphine's eyes burned. She pressed her hand against her lips, but the tears came anyway, hot and unstoppable. She tried to hide them, but the whole hall had already seen. The great governor, feared across the stars, was crying in public, and yet in that moment, she did not care. Her daughter was dancing. The first steps, the hall held its breath. On the stage, the human knelt beside Alara, showing her simple movements with his hands. He lifted his arm, turned his wrist, swayed his body slightly to the rhythm of the soft music. Then he paused, waiting. Alara hesitated. Her fingers trembled as she tried to copy him. Her arm rose halfway, then shook, then dropped again. From the shadows of the hall, a few cruel laughs escaped. The sound cut through the air like knives. Alara's cheeks burned. She lowered her eyes, ashamed, ready to stop. She had been mocked before. She had seen the whispers, the looks of pity or scorn. Part of her wanted to run, to disappear from the stage, but the human's voice reached her, calm and steady. "Do not rush. Do not fear. Only follow me." He moved again, slower this time, guiding her hand with his. She tried once more. Her arm lifted, shaking, but this time it stayed up. The human smiled softly. His calmness gave her courage. The music swelled gently. The human leaned back, making a small, graceful motion, and Alara followed. It was clumsy, but it was movement. Not the stillness of her chair, not the helplessness she had always known. This was something new. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. The nobles who had laughed now fell silent. They had expected failure, but now something unexpected was taking shape. Step by step, the human rose, drawing Alara with him. Her legs trembled as she stood, her weight uneven, but she did not fall. The hall gasped. For many, it was the first time they had ever seen the governor's daughter stand without help. Governor Seraphine's heart pounded in her chest. She gripped the edge of her throne, torn between fear and wonder. She had seen her daughter stumble so many times, seen her fall and cry. But now, in front of the entire empire, Alara stood, weak, unsteady, but unbroken. The human bowed, as if presenting her to the audience. Then, with great care, he stepped aside, letting her take a small step forward. Alara froze. The ground before her looked wide, endless, terrifying. One step seemed impossible. Her body refused, fear clawing at her. The human bent low, his eyes level with hers. "You are not alone," he whispered. She looked at him. His hand was outstretched, waiting. Slowly, with every ounce of strength, Alara moved her foot. It dragged awkwardly, but it touched the stage. She swayed, nearly fell, but he caught her arm and steadied her. The hall gasped again. One step, just one, but it was a miracle. The human clapped softly, encouraging her as if that single step was the most beautiful dance ever seen. His joy made her smile, a small, timid smile, but real. For the first time, she believed she could try again. The music rose a little louder. The human stepped back, showing her the next movement, an easy sway left to right. She tried stumbling, but the rhythm carried her. Soon, her small body rocked gently with the sound. The audience leaned forward. Their mocking whispers had vanished. They watched in silence now, drawn by something they could not explain. It was not perfection. It was not grace. It was courage. Alara's face began to glow. Her hands moved higher, smoother. Her steps grew a little bolder. She laughed again, the sound like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. And the hall, once filled with cold eyes, began to change. Even the harshest nobles could not laugh anymore. What they saw was not weakness, but a child who refused to surrender. Governor Seraphine's tears blurred her vision. She did not care who saw. She had spent years hiding her daughter, protecting her from the cruel eyes of the galaxy. Now for the first time she saw Alara not as fragile but as fierce. The human guided her into a small spin. Her steps were unsteady, but she turned, her dress fluttering in the stage light. The hall gasped once more. To them, it looked like magic. The music swelled higher. Alara's smile widened. She lifted both arms into the air, copying the human perfectly this time. The hall, struck silent, could only watch in awe. Then something extraordinary happened. The human stepped back, leaving her in the center of the stage. He bowed deeply, as if saying, "Now it is yours." Alara froze. The hall was massive, the eyes of thousands staring at her. She wanted to run, but then she remembered the words, "You are not alone." She took another step, then another. Each one shaky, but each one hers. The grand hall was no longer filled with laughter or whispers. It was filled with silence, heavy, electric, reverent. And there, under the blue fire of the floating lanterns, Governor Seraphine's disabled daughter danced her first true steps. The dance awakens. The hall was silent, yet it felt alive. Every eye followed Alara as she swayed gently on the stage, her small body trembling but her spirit shining. The human stayed near her, not leading too much now, but guiding just enough to keep her steady. The music shifted. The rhythm grew stronger, warmer, as if the instruments themselves could feel what was happening. A soft drumbeat echoed, steady like a heartbeat. Ilara lifted her head at the sound, her movement slowly matching the rhythm. The human stepped aside again, giving her space. He raised his arms, showing a new motion, a wider gesture this time. Ilara hesitated. Her hands shook, but she copied him, her fingers opening like flower petals. The lanterns above caught the movement, and light danced across her silver skin. The nobles, who once whispered and laughed, now leaned forward. No one dared to speak. Something about this moment held them all captive. The human circled her, never taking his eyes off hers, moving with a quiet grace that invited her to follow. She turned slowly, her steps awkward, but each one firmer than the last. For the first time, she was not being carried. She was carrying herself. Governor Seraphine's heart felt heavy and light all at once. She had imagined her daughter many ways, fragile, broken, in need of protection, but never like this. Never so bold, never so alive. Ilara stumbled again. The hall gasped. But before anyone could react, she laughed, a bright, unashamed laugh. She caught herself, lifted her arms higher, and kept moving. That laugh silenced the last shadows of doubt in the room. The human clapped softly, encouraging her. He added a gentle step forward, sliding one foot, then the other. Ilara copied him. The audience watched her fight for balance and sway dangerously, then recover. Step after step, she found her rhythm. The music grew louder. The strings sang, the drums throbbed. It was no longer just background. It was alive, pushing her forward. Her body, weak and trembling, seemed to find hidden strength in every note. And then came the moment. The human stretched out his hand, inviting her into a spin. Gasps rippled through the hall. Everyone thought it was impossible. Too much, too far. But Ilara, eyes locked on his, trusted him. She turned. Her foot dragged, her legs nearly gave way, but the human steadied her just enough. The spin was not perfect, but it was real. The hall erupted, not in laughter, but in awe. Even the cruelest noble could not deny what they had seen. Governor Seraphine's vision blurred with tears. Her lips trembled. She pressed a hand against her chest as if to hold her breaking heart together. She had never cried in public. She had never allowed herself such weakness. But tonight the tears fell freely. Ilara saw her mother's face and smiled brighter. She spun again, this time without help, slower but stronger. Her arms stretched wide, her dress catching the air. For a moment it looked as if she was flying. The audience began to feel something they did not expect, shame. Shame for their laughter, shame for their cruel words. They had mocked her, doubted her, dismissed her. Now they watched her defy all of them, not with anger, but with joy. The human bowed his head slightly, stepping farther back, giving her the stage. He became less performer, more shadow, letting her light grow. It was no longer his dance. It was hers. The music swelled higher, filling the hall with sound. Ilara moved with it, her steps imperfect but filled with heart. Every stumble turned into strength, every mistake into beauty. She was not just dancing, she was fighting. Living, shining, and the galaxy's leaders, warriors and nobles, beings who had seen battles and victories across countless worlds, sat in silence, humbled by the courage of one fragile child. Governor Seraphine rose from her throne. She did not care for protocol, did not care if she looked weak. Her tears streamed openly now. Her daughter had become something greater than she had ever dreamed. The music reached its peak. Ilara raised her arms high, her body shaking with effort, and let out a laugh so bright it seemed to fill the hall with light. She turned one last time, slow but proud, and stopped in the center of the stage, smiling at the crowd. The silence that followed was heavy, electric. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then slowly a sound began, applause. Soft at first, then louder, until the entire hall thundered with claps and cheers. Ilara bowed clumsily, her smile never fading. The human bowed too, his eyes calm, his mission complete. And in that moment it was clear to all. This was no ordinary performance. It was something far greater. The dance had awakened not only Ilara, but the entire hall. The tears of the governor, the thunder of applause rolled across the grand hall like a storm. But Governor Seraphine heard nothing. She saw only her daughter. Ilara stood at the center of the stage, her body trembling from effort, her face glowing with joy. She looked so small against the vast black stone and the towering nobles around her. Yet to Seraphine she was larger than all of them. The governor's hand shook. She pressed them against the armrest of her throne, but it was no use. The tears she had fought to hold back spilled freely down her silver cheeks. She bowed her head, ashamed for a moment. She had never let anyone see her cry, not even her closest advisors. She was known as unbreakable, a wall of power. Yet now, before the eyes of the galaxy, she wept. The hall noticed. Whispers rippled through the audience. Nobles leaned toward each other, astonished. The governor is crying. She has never done this. Some spoke with shock, others with wonder. No one mocked. Not this time. The human standing just behind Alara noticed too. He bowed slightly toward the governor as though offering her the moment. Not for himself, but for her and her daughter. Alara, still smiling, looked up and saw her mother's tears. For a second she froze. She had never seen Seraphine cry either. Her mother was always cold, always strong, always untouchable. But now her tears shone like rivers of light under the lanterns. Something shifted in Alara's heart. She lifted her arms higher, moving with more strength than before, as if she wanted to dance not just for herself, but for her mother. Her feet dragged, her balance wavered, but she kept going. The music softened, falling into a slow, gentle rhythm, as though even the musicians understood this moment was no longer about performance. It was about truth. Seraphine rose to her feet. The crowd gasped again. The governor rarely stood during performances, but she could not remain seated. Her tall frame loomed over the hall, her eyes locked on her daughter. Her lips trembled, and in a voice raw with emotion, she whispered, "She dances. My daughter dances." Though her words were soft, the hall heard them. A chill passed through the audience. It was not the voice of a ruler speaking to her empire. It was the voice of a mother speaking to her child. The nobles bowed their heads. The mocking smiles were gone. Even the rivals who had once prayed for Seraphine's weakness could not hold their pride. They too were silent, struck by the truth of the moment. Alara turned once more, clumsy but radiant, and stopped facing her mother. Her arms stretched outward as if reaching for her. The hall seemed to vanish. No nobles, no soldiers, no alien leaders. There was only mother and daughter. Seraphine stepped down from her throne. Her long cloak trailed behind her as she moved slowly through the silent crowd. Each step echoed against the stone floor. No one dared to breathe. No one dared to stop her. When she reached the edge of the stage, she looked up at Alara. Tears continued to fall, but her expression was proud, softer than anyone had ever seen. She raised her hands slowly, trembling like a woman seeing sunlight for the first time. Alara reached back, their fingers almost touching, though the stage's height kept them apart. The human knelt quietly in the background. He lowered his head, stepping aside. This was not his moment. This belonged to them. Seraphine's voice shook as she spoke, but her words carried through the entire hall. "You are not broken, my child. You are brighter than any star in this empire." Alara's eyes filled with tears now, but they were not sad. They were tears of joy. She lifted her chin high, proud, strong, alive. The audience could no longer contain themselves. The applause roared again, louder than before, rolling like thunder until the very walls of the hall shook. Some nobles clapped with tears in their own eyes. Others bowed their heads, ashamed of their past cruelty. Seraphine did not look at them. She did not care what the galaxy thought. For once, the mighty governor was not thinking of her empire, her power, or her rivals. She was thinking only of the fragile child who had found the courage to stand before the stars and dance. She wiped her cheeks, but the tears kept coming. She let them. She no longer hid them. Let the galaxy see. Let them know that even the strongest rulers have hearts, and even the most fragile children can awaken them. The human finally stepped forward again, bowing deeply before Seraphine. His eyes were calm, his face humble. He had guided Alara's first steps, but he took no glory for himself, and in that moment Seraphine understood. This was not just a performance. This was a gift from a human, the very race so many had mocked as weak. Yet it was a human who had shown her daughter's strength to the world. The hall would never forget the sight of the governor crying, nor the child who danced. But for Seraphine, it was not shame. It was triumph. For the first time in her reign, she was not feared for her power, but respected for her love. The audience transformed. The roar of applause shook the grand hall, but it was not the kind that followed ordinary performances. This was different. It was heavier, deeper, almost desperate, as if the entire crowd was trying to cover its own shame with thunder. The nobles who once whispered cruelly now clapped until their hands stung. The warriors who had laughed before now stood in silence, their faces hard but their eyes unsettled. Even the rivals of Governor Seraphine, those who had secretly hoped to see her humiliated, bowed their heads, humbled by what they had witnessed. Alara stood in the center of the stage, breathing hard, her face glowing with pride. Her arms trembled, her legs shook, but she did not hide it. She was fragile, and yet she was powerful. The contradiction stunned them all. The human stood a little behind her, quiet, letting the moment belong to her. He did not wave, did not demand recognition. He only bowed low, showing respect for the girl who had found her strength. The hall buzzed with whispers now, but the tone had changed. How could we have mocked her? She is not weak. She is braver than all of us. And the human, how did he know? Governor Seraphine remained at the foot of the stage, her face wet with tears. Her tall figure, usually a symbol of power and authority, now seemed human in a way no one had ever seen. And yet, that vulnerability did not weaken her in the eyes of the audience. It made her stronger. For years, many had feared her as a ruler. They saw her as a weapon, sharp and cold. But tonight, they saw something greater. They saw her as a mother, proud and broken open by love. That sight changed everything. Some nobles wiped their own eyes in secret. Others turned away, ashamed of their earlier cruelty. A few stared at the human with a strange respect. He had done what no general, no warrior, no leader had ever done. He had brought tears to the eyes of the governor and pride to the heart of her daughter. The applause faded, replaced by a stillness heavier than silence. The hall seemed to breathe as one, waiting for what would come next. Alara, catching her breath, turned her head toward her mother. Their eyes met. She smiled through her exhaustion, and Seraphine smiled back, her face trembling with emotion. The crowd had never seen this before. The unshakable governor smiling with tears on her cheeks, her daughter shining beside her. The alien leaders began to understand something. Strength was not only measured by armies, wealth, or power. Tonight, strength had been shown through fragile steps, trembling hands, and a laugh that refused to die. And the one who revealed this truth was not one of them. It was a human. The word spread like a wave through the hall. Human. Some said it with awe, others with disbelief. But none could deny it now. The race they had thought weak, clumsy, unworthy, had changed the way they saw strength itself. The human lifted his eyes just once. His expression was calm, almost humble. He did not bask in glory. He seemed to say with his silence, "This is not about me. This is about her." The musicians, sensing the end, let the final notes fade into the air. The last echoes of the song lingered like a heartbeat, then disappeared. The hall remained utterly still. Then, slowly, one of the alien commanders rose to his feet. His armor clinked as he straightened, his stern face softened. He raised his hands and clapped again, loud and steady. Another noble followed. Then another. Soon the entire hall stood, their applause no longer thunderous but reverent like a prayer. Governor Seraphine closed her eyes. For once, the applause was not for her power or her victories. It was for her daughter. And that truth filled her with a pride greater than any battlefield triumph. Alara bowed clumsily, her small frame swaying, but the crowd only clapped louder. She laughed again, bright and fearless, and the sound seemed to heal something deep within the hall itself. The audience had been transformed. They had arrived as judges ready to mock weakness. They left as witnesses to something greater, hope. For many, this moment would never leave them. They would speak of it to their children, to their people, to their worlds. They would tell the story of the night the governor's fragile daughter danced and the galaxy wept with her. And always in that story, there would be a human. A quiet human who showed them that strength was not about perfection, but about courage. As the applause finally faded, the hall bowed into silence once more. But it was not the cold silence of judgment. It was the heavy, reverent silence of respect. Governor Seraphine turned to face the crowd. She stood tall again, but her tears still shone. Her voice rang clear, steady, and filled with pride. "Tonight you have seen truth. My daughter is not broken. She is the strongest of us all." The hall erupted one last time, not in whispers, not in mockery, but in a roar of agreement, and so on that night, the galaxy's rulers learned a lesson they had never expected. Weakness can become strength, and strength can be taught by those they least believed in. Humanity's gift. The roar of voices still echoed through the grand hall when the human stepped forward. He did not move with pride nor with arrogance. His steps were calm, almost humble, as though he carried no victory for himself. He stopped just beside Alara, bowing deeply before Governor Seraphine. Alara, still glowing from the dance, leaned against him slightly, her legs trembling from exhaustion. Yet her smile never faded. She had danced. She had stood before the galaxy, and she had been seen. Seraphine gazed down at them both, her face wet with tears that refused to stop. Her tall frame shook with emotion, but her voice, when it came, was steady and clear. "You have given me what I thought I would never see. You have given her freedom, even if only for these few steps." The hall listened in silence. Leaders from across the stars, warriors who had fought 1,000 battles, bowed their heads, unable to deny the truth. Tonight, their vision of strength had been broken and rebuilt. The human raised his eyes, his voice low but firm. "It was not me. It was always within her. All I did was show her the path." Those words struck deeper than any weapon. The crowd had seen his guiding hand, but now they understood. He had not carried her. He had simply helped her discover the strength she already had. Seraphine stepped onto the stage. The hall gasped again. It was rare for a ruler to leave her throne in front of so many. She moved slowly, her cloak trailing behind her, until she stood before her daughter. For a long moment, mother and child stared at each other. Then Seraphine bent low, kneeling before Alara. Gasps filled the hall. The mighty governor, feared across worlds, bowed before her fragile daughter, her arms wrapped around Alara, pulling her close. The girl buried her face into her mother's chest, and together they wept, not with shame but with pride. The human stepped back, letting the scene belong to them. He bowed once more, lowering his head, as though vanishing into the background of the moment. But the hall did not forget him. Whispers spread again, but now they carried respect, not scorn. It was a human who showed her. The humans, perhaps they are not weak at all. One noble spoke softly to another. "If they can see strength where we see weakness, what else might they teach us?" Another murmured, "We misjudged them. We thought them fragile, yet they carry a strength we do not understand." The change spread like fire across the room. The audience had not only seen a child dance, they had seen humanity itself step into the light. Seraphine rose again, holding her daughter's hand. She turned to face the crowd, her silver skin gleaming under the lanterns. Her voice rang across the hall, stronger than ever before. "Let all of you remember this night. Strength is not in perfection. It is not in power. It is in courage. And courage can come from anywhere, even from those we called weak." Her gaze swept the hall, daring anyone to deny her. No one did. Heads bowed. Respect was given, not demanded. Finally, her eyes fell upon the human. She held his gaze for a long moment, and then, in a voice filled with gratitude she rarely showed, she said, "You have shown me something I will never forget. You have given not only my daughter a gift, but the entire empire." The human bowed again, his answer simple. "Sometimes the strongest step is not in war, but in the heart." The hall grew silent again. The words lingered, sinking deep into every mind. These were not the words of a general or a politician. They were the words of a human who had seen the truth, that even the smallest act of courage could change the course of history. Applause rose one final time, shaking the grand hall. This time it was not just for Alara. It was not just for the governor. It was for the lesson the galaxy had learned. And so the story spread. Across planets and star systems, in markets and palaces, beings spoke of the night when the governor wept, her daughter danced, and a human showed them what strength truly meant. In the years to come, treaties were signed, doors were opened, and humanity, once dismissed as weak, was welcomed with new respect. Not because of their armies or their weapons, but because of their hearts. But for Governor Seraphine, the empire's respect was secondary. What mattered most was the smile she saw on her daughter's face whenever she remembered that night. For the first time in her long reign, she understood what true strength was, and it had been shown to her by a human.